There he is. Great, man. How are you doing? YouTube. Ready to there far away. Yeah, we're going live. We're live. We're fine. We're not having club.
That's a surprise.
Just that.
Might want to turn your mic off then. Until you're ready to speak to the public.
I need to take my meeting in here. I need to do my meeting in here.
And maybe that, because I got 3 copies of the vote.
I see. It's right here.
Oh, even when I'm scared to get.
Might beat me back. We got it. We go. Got my steps in.
And it's fast enough. Okay, and we're already recording everybody that needs to be recording us.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
Yes.
okay. We're gonna call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for February 24th, 2026. Roll call
Chair Simpson,
here.
Commissioner Tolotson,
Here.
Commissioner Vance,
Here.
Commissioner Kai,
Here.
Commissioner Barnes,
Here.
Commissioner Whiteola.
Present.
All right, thank you very much. This evening, we do not have a consent agenda, so we'll roll right into council liaison announcements. Counselor Giles?
Yes, thank you for having me here. I'm just getting over a cold, or else I would be there in person with you. I'm mindful of your health here. So the big thing that is a partnership here between the Planning Commission and City Council is as we are getting, or as we're looking to the Old Town Plan adoption that I think you guys have had a first look at already, at least, if not more than one look. We're looking at some recommendations. We'd like some specifics, and I know that the staff is working on it, but we want to be creative. We want to open it up to what is going to have the biggest bang for the buck. Our bucks are very limited, and so we're looking at some things that we can do that are non-financial, some things that are a little bit financial, or maybe a little bit each year. The facade grant, some of these different things that you have looked into, and there's generally a broad feeling for let's see what we can do. And part of it might be, hey, we're going to do the facade grants to make it so that we have more of a unified look in Old Town, or we go, and there might be some code things in there, etc. So just know we're looking for feedback and advice on that from the Planning Commission on trying to, and from staff as well, right? This is one of those things where we're opening it up to all and the community as well, the good ideas. We're trying to figure out what can we do with our limited amount of money and budget to build a kind of old town that is vibrant and alive. So as you see that, and as it keeps coming before you, try not to self-censor and try to speak up if you have ideas that are going to help that thing go forward. We had a great planning session. I can't remember the last time we've met together, but we have our goals, and one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we're meeting more with the different boards and commissions, and having joint meetings and making sure that you have real work. And it's less so with the Planning Commission because you're a little bit different entity than some of the other boards and commissions, but that was a big thing on our agenda, was to make sure that all of the boards and commissions feel empowered and that they feel that they have stuff to work on that is meaningful in a meaningful way. We also have we're going to adopt the goals that we've set. There's obviously a big part of that is trying to figure out Sherwood West, and we're in a little bit of a holding pattern on some of that due to some of the laws that are being passed in Salem, but also some lawsuits that are ongoing. But just know that we'd like, that's a big part of our planning for this next year, is to make sure that we can have that move forward. I think that is all I have, unless there's something else that you guys have questions about, or have any questions for me as a city councilor.
I don't see. Does anybody have any questions for Councilor Giles?
I do. The charter amendments passed, I believe. Is that correct? And yeah, and what are the council's next steps with that, if any?
So we're going to approve the amendments, I think, at this next meeting, or maybe we did the last meeting, I can't remember, but I've seen a lot of agendas. And that essentially just puts it on, some stuff that we've always kind of assumed, that we have home rule and a few other things. We're just codifying it, so it doesn't actually change how we do things. We just wanted it in our charter, so it gives us standing if we have to take it to court, if the community standards are going to be ignored, or design standards, or different things like that. We wanted to have local control over that, and so part of it was just making sure that was a part of the charter. We have not decided anything beyond accepting the amendment as the voters approved.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have. Commissioner Kai, did you have anything before we move on?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, we'll go on to staff announcements, and thank you, Counselor, for attending this evening, virtually especially.
My
Alright.
pleasure.
The only staff announcement I have is just really following Counselor Giles. The Old Town Strategic Action Plan will come before you. We're looking at the March 10th Planning Commission meeting, so just about 2 weeks from today. Really, last week we had a work session with council, and like Counselor Giles said, we had a good work session on the investment funding aspect of that plan. So I encourage you to take a look at that and obviously provide any guidance to the council. But that is the only thing on the horizon right now on your docket for next month.
Alright, thank you very much.
I do have one announcement. I don't think we've told the whole commission or maybe anybody. Commissioner Walmsley unfortunately had to step down from planning commission for some personal reasons. So we do have a vacancy. Well, first of all, thank you, Commissioner Walmsley. You can't be here tonight, but for his service. And yeah, we have an opening. So you know, anyone who's interested in serving, send them our way. We'll be doing an open recruitment, but we can add them to the list as well. So thanks.
I have a question regarding the ruling and rejection of the application. Is that something that will be brought before us, or more information about
The
exceptions? Yeah,
SB 1537.
yeah.
Yeah, we can answer questions. Yeah.
Is
We
it-
can answer questions quickly now, and happy to chat more offline or during a work session.
Okay, so it was not approved.
Correct.
Our application was not approved. Are we going to revise and resubmit, or is it under consideration?
At this point, in order to resubmit, we probably want to get the blessing from council to
Okay.
to resubmit it. We you know, getting the exemption approved would likely be in alignment with council goals. But truly there are some nuances and some in terms of like what the exemption actually gets you. And I'll just say as an example, if we get the exemption in place, it's not completely clear to staff at the city if we would then be required to approve all variances even under 17 units per acre. So the exemption is around mandatory variances over 17 units per acre. So basically, if an applicant comes to us and we don't have the exemption in place and the development is for 17 units per acre or more, we would, without the exemption, we have to approve those if it results in more units, lowers the cost, and or meets the third criteria.
Mm.
What's not clear to me, and the nuance here is, if we have that exemption in place, there's a requirement that we approve 90% of variances while we have the exemption. Otherwise, we lose it. And I think an open question, which we haven't really had answered from the state, is that only 17 units per acre or more of that 90%? Or if we get if you guys get a variance request, for example, at 5 units per acre and they want to do 4 stories instead of 3 stories, are those types of applications also subject to that 90% approval rate? So I think there's just a lot of nuances that, as when we got into it, it's like, well, it might not actually be smart to have the exemption actually. And that's where I think a work session with city council would be good to kind of chat through those pros and cons and then see if they actually want to resubmit. But just to be clear, like where things stand now, we don't have the exemption in place. So if we get an application for housing that's over 17 units per acre, and it meets one of the 3 criteria like this housing development did here, then we have to approve it. Without the exemption in place, however, if we get a variance request at anything under 17 units per acre, it's very clear that you have no obligation to approve it.
If
And that's
that was
where
the
we are
reg-
right now. And that's why I say I don't know that it actually benefits us to have that exemption in place. So it's complicated with all of these state laws. They're new. We're figuring things out with the state as they figure it out, frankly. So that's kind of where things are at.
All right, thank you for the update. Appreciate that. All right, any other questions of staff before we move on to community comments? All right, Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. If you wish to testify either under community comments or during the public hearing tonight, we ask you to fill out one of the blue testimony cards in the back and turn it into one of the staff members so we can have it for the record. And I have no blue cards for community comments. All right, and no one signed up to testify for public community comments over the Wi-Fi, the YouTube, however that works. All right. The old interweb situation.
Over the Wi-Fi screen.
Next item.
Next item, moving on. All right, public hearings. Okay. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on LU 2025-018 PA. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning LU 2025-018 PA amendment to the Sherwood Zoning and Development Code to allow food card pods in the light industrial zone as a conditional use permit. The commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. Staff will present the staff report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission. We will then open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as follows. The applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will get 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will get 4 minutes each, and then rebuttal from the applicant, which is the remainder of 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. There'll be final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, discussion and deliberation by the commission. A recommendation to City Council may be made at the close of this hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. Staff will recognize people who have signed up to speak 24 hours in advance, and we have none, correct? When it is your time to provide testimony, please state your name and address for the record, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. The role of the Planning Commission this evening is to make a recommendation to City Council for final decision on the pending matter. Planning Department will now present the staff report.
And Dan, if you can put up the presentation, sorry, not Commissioner Bance there. We got IT Dan in the back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Evening, Commissioners. Tonight you'll be hearing a proposed plan amendment under LU 2025-018 PA to allow food cart pods within the light industrial zone as a conditional use and subject to the provisions outlined under the recently adopted Chapter 1639 food cart pods. This amendment is applicant proposed by ORWA Sherwood LLC and would be applicable to only light industrial zoned properties within 500 feet of Tualatin Sherwood Road. Here you can see a brief description of the information just iterated. Application materials were made available to the public on the link below. Here you can view the applicable criteria associated with the proposed amendment, ranging from Title 16 Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code, Sherwood's Comprehensive Plan, the Metro Urban Growth Management Functional Plan, statewide planning goals, and general consistency with the Transportation Planning Rule. Firstly, staff are going to share with the commission the proposed amendments as adjusted by staff, an effort to better align the proposal with existing code. Please note there are no substantive changes between what the applicant proposes and the adjustments provided by staff. As illustrated above, food cart pods would fall under the umbrella of eating and drinking establishments and have 3 associated footnotes. Limitations on size as mandated by Title IV under the Urban Growth Management Functional Plan. Be subjected to the criteria under Chapter 1639 food cart pods and be required to be entirely sited within 500 feet of Tualatin Sherwood Road. Under Chapter 1639, the only adjustment proposed by staff is the alteration of language within Section 16.39.030.c as to be inclusive of the industrial zone district and to minimize repetition. Here you can see the affected parcels in blue. Please note the area highlighted in blue is within 500 feet of Tualatin Sherwood Road, and therefore future submittals would be required to be entirely sited within that area. Please note that the distance begins is measured at the right-of-way line. But in general, in terms of general processes, nothing is expected to change. An application for a food cart pod will still be required to be processed under a Type 4 site plan review process and a Type 3 conditional use process as a consolidated application, with Planning Commission making the final decision. This would lead into a final site plan review from staff to ensure all conditions of approval are met and the appropriate building permits are obtained, ultimately leading to the leasing of each food cart, with each property owner being required to actively manage and regulate their respective pods. Again, for context, existing regulations under 1639 are listed on this slide. This is just kind of a high-level view of the things outlined in that chapter, since you guys have already kind of went through the process of reviewing it. But there are no changes to how the development or management standards are implemented within that chapter. This would only be for uses to allow the use within the light industrial zone district. Here you can see a conceptual drawing of the proposed food cart pod provided by the applicant, which offers the commission a visual representation of how this food cart pod development could ultimately take shape or form. And here's a list of updated revised information since the release of the staff report dated February 17th, 2026. Again, there were some changes to the tentative city council hearings from March 17th to April 7th and April 7th to April 21st. And then there was a correction to the date listed on the engineering memorandum. Here you can see public notices and agency comments. These were routed to each respective agency within the time frame required by code and state. Public notice was issued in the Tigard Times publication, and general-wide city-wide posting was on or before January 20th. At this time, no testimony or public comments were received prior to the public hearing. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the findings in the staff report under LU 2025-018 Plan Amendment dated February 17th, 2026, and recommend approval to City Council. Planning Commission can choose other alternatives. They can continue the public hearing to a date certain if more information is needed. Recommend approval of the application based on the findings in the staff report. Recommend approval of the application with the revised findings and or conditions, or recommend denial of the application with revised findings. That is it for staff. Thank you.
Is the engineering report date? I was looking for there.
Oh gosh, sorry. Got too crazy. There we go.
Revision of staff report under section 3 stating an engineering memorandum, February 9th. Okay. Huh, okay. I'm just looking for the engineering department memorandum, so I'll look for it later. So, did you see it? Okay. All right. I'll make a note and look for it because I don't see the engineering. Letter, the memo.
All the appendices are labeled on page 16. Gotcha. None of them are
The end.
engineering.
Oh, it says engineering memo E. Okay, I must have. Oh, there it is. Sorry. It's a one pager. That's me. I didn't flag it. Sorry. Copy that. All right. Thank you. Are any questions of staff before we call the applicant up to provide testimony? All right, then I don't have any blue cards, so if the applicant will come up and provide your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name's Brian Veracchione. I'm a planner at McKenzie. We are in Portland. Our address is 1515 Southeast Water Avenue, Suite 100, Portland, Oregon, 97214. First off, I just wanted to say thank you, planning commissioners, Chair Simpson, for being here tonight and hearing this request. And also I want to say thank you to staff. Hugo, Sean, and Eric have coached us off and on over probably a year now as we batted around this idea, and I really think that it's the collaborative process that staff has had with the applicant team has really helped to refine the proposal and get it in a shape where staff was comfortable with it. So first off, I want to clarify that Mackenzie has been retained by one of the property owners in the mapped area. So the applicant, ORWA Sherwood LLC, owns a couple of properties that would be affected by it. Currently, one of those sites is vacant, and that's on the west side of Century Drive. Then on the east side, they own a very large parcel. It's got 4 industrial buildings on it, and the north end is currently undeveloped. So, you know, the genesis of this idea, it looks like Hugo's maybe looking for the map, yeah. The genesis of this idea was the property owner approaching us and hearing about this new rules for food cart pods that the city had rolled out and said, boy, this would be kind of interesting. But as you know, as currently written, the rules apply only to sites that are zoned commercial. And so geographically, the RC zone and the GC zone, there's a little bit in Old Town, but most of it's out by Highway 99 on the west side of town. Whereas the eastern portion of the city is where much of the employment industrial zoned land is sited. So based on that sort of, you know, owner interest, but a mismatch in what's allowed, we all put our thinking caps on and met with staff and talked about this and tried to figure out what's the way that we could make some amendments that would benefit not only our client, but other property owners as well. And even bigger picture, hopefully the city as a whole. That's the goal here, is how can we allow for a variety of locations for food cart pods. So we bounced around a few ideas. One of them was, well, what if we did a zone change? Can you see those maps on your computers? All right, great.
Yes.
So just to be more specific, the 2 sites that our client owns are labeled with the circled D and the circled E. So we thought about possibly doing a zone change to a commercial zone, but that didn't seem ideal, partly from you know, public policy standpoint. Now you're doing spot zoning to drop a commercial zone in the middle of industrial. Metro has designated this as industrial land, so I didn't really want to go against that. And also it really opens up what a property owner could do. I mean, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. In this case, there were a lot of concerns about traffic, particularly with the improvements that Washington County was performing on Walton Sherwood Road. And so anytime there's a zone change, even if a property owner has a specific use in mind, the transportation planning rule says, well, you have to look at the worst case. So the owner wasn't interested in that, and it also didn't seem like quite the right fix, because all they really want to do is everything that's allowed now, plus have the possibility of food cart pods. So anyway, that's all the genesis, the backstory. What we settled on for a method of how can we do this is basically the text amendment that's before you today. We tried to make it pretty narrowly crafted, so it doesn't affect all the light industrial land throughout the city. And the rationale behind that was, well, Tualatin Sherwood Road, it gets a fair amount of traffic, and it would be reasonable for some of that traffic to want to stop off and have a place to eat. So that's why the 500-foot offset from the road, and honestly, it was kind of an arbitrary number, but clearly you'll notice graphically it does encompass our client site, coincidentally. So we wanted also to make sure that we were really analyzing, well, what other property owners could make use of this. So everything in the shaded blue is within the 500 feet, and it's about 50 acres. But then we tried to pick out, well, where are some areas where you actually might fit one of these? And so those are the lettered areas with the yellow dashed line. And we came up with half a dozen different sites totaling about 8 acres. The point of this exercise was, how do we graphically and numerically show that if you were to adopt this code amendment, suddenly all your land wouldn't get used up by, all your light industrial land wouldn't get used up by food cart pods. So anyway, we're trying to narrowly craft something that benefits multiple property owners, but is still fairly focused. So we think overall this will have multiple benefits. It benefits the employers on the east part of the city, because now their employees can come here and eat lunch. Hopefully that also reduces vehicle miles traveled, because there's could be another opportunity that's closer to where those employment sites are. And there's some homes not too far away, so the residents could have other options as well. And obviously it would benefit the property owners by giving them one more potential use for their site. And, big picture, looking at the local economy, we also think it would benefit small business owners, because while there's an overall operator, the food cart pods themselves are typically small business owners and entrepreneurs who want to try something new. So Hugo mentioned on this, but there are some procedural protections built in to make sure that suddenly all this area wouldn't turn into food cart pods, because there's the conditional use review process. So Planning Commission can look at, is it appropriate in the location that is proposed? Are there compatibility concerns? Would this use up the last remaining light industrial parcel, or any of those considerations would be part of that site plan review, which would ensure that all the food cart pod standards are met. And then, as Hugo pointed out, there's some little footnotes about limitations on size and based on metro limitations. So all of those would continue to apply. And then also at that time, there'd have to be a full transportation impact analysis. So that's all to say that we think there's lots of procedures and protections in place so that you can fully evaluate any specific proposals that come in front of you in the future. It's all a little bit hypothetical at the moment, because we're just asking for permission to allow us to ask for permission to do something. Anyway, the renderings that you saw, if you wouldn't mind flipping to that. Those are also conceptual in nature. The property owner asked us to sketch some things up. And so we reviewed the food cart pod standards and tried to factor in the size limitations and so forth. And so what's pictured there is probably about the biggest thing that you could ever get. By which I mean the area is about 20,000 square feet for the combined area of the building, the food cart pods, the circulation for pedestrians and outdoor seating and so forth. So that's like a maximum intensity, but could be pretty exciting. There's what we sketched up was 16 different food carts with a central building that would have shared seating, and there'd be some outdoor seating as well. And if this were placed on the larger of our two client sites, it would face out towards Rock Creek, which would be neat. But again, it's conceptual, so no guarantees that anything would look exactly like that. And if one of the other owners propose something, then they could have a very different look. We think this was consistent with the comprehensive plan policies, and we gave you a pretty thick packet of stuff to back that up. As well as the state rules, the land use goals that apply statewide, and the transportation planning rule, and then metro rules and the city's code and all that. So tried to make sure we're checking all the boxes. On the transportation planning rule, I do want to point out that the transportation engineers looked at it and concluded that it did not have a significant effect, which is the keywords. And so that all seemed fine, and ODOT had no objections as well. And then finally, as Hugo noted, the wording that we proposed for the amendment is slightly different than what staff proposed. So we had some things in paragraphs and they moved just to footnotes, but we don't have any objection to what staff has done. It's the same words, different places. So it's great. So with all that, we'd like to request that the Planning Commission make a positive recommendation to City Council. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
So just for clarification, you're accepting the conditions and changes that staff has recommended?
I don't believe there are any conditions.
No conditions, just the
The
changes.
change, yes, absolutely fine.
Okay,
Mhm.
I just want to make sure. And then when we're looking at this, I just jump at a question before this picture moves away.
Yeah.
Your statement was this is 20,000 square foot for building, carts, seating and circulation. But not
Pedestrian
inclusive,
circulation.
but not inclusive of the parking lot.
Correct.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
wanna
so
clarify.
Metro's limitations are really about the building size for retail, commercial type uses, and they don't regulate how much parking or any of that stuff.
And with the new state laws on a bus route, the parking is not, and can you answer the question? The parking's not required. Is that a true statement? Is that, oh, but that's industrial. Is it required? How do we address parking?
So food cart pods have their own parking standard that's separate from the others. So I believe it's 2 spaces per pod, if I remember right.
Oh, okay. It's a
But
new code section that I don't have memorized or,
yeah, right. You haven't seen it yet. So I mean,
well, we just approved it.
But that's a relevant question because it means this is light industrial, but the conditional use would basically bring in all the food cart. Like if we allowed one of these, then all the food cart pod code would then apply, not the light industrial,
correct.
right? So parking standards of that section would apply, not light industrial standards.
Yeah, it's a standalone chapter. So basically, we're just asking, can some light industrial sites use that chapter? Because right now they're not
Chapter.
eligible to.
In lieu of other requirements. Since I know we're not evaluating this application, but you presented it so we can conceptualize. So in the interest of conceptualizing, in your opinion, does this rendering reflect our current code? Like, would it meet our current, so that we can visualize appropriately?
That is the intent.
Okay.
Yes, we think it meets the code. Obviously, staff hasn't fully weighed in on that since it is just a picture,
Yeah,
but
but you made efforts to
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
so-
absolutely. Yeah. And we met with staff once or twice and showed them some earlier, you know, layouts and such and talked through some of the stuff. So they've been guiding us along the way.
To just add to that very briefly, what I believe I heard you say was this is a conceptualization of those food cart, that language at its theoretical maximum. So when a
Yes.
human looks at this, this should be a pretty reasonable approximation of the largest food
Right.
cart.
Yeah, at least our interpretation of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, that was the property owner wanted to know before they go out to all this effort, like, would this actually work? Wouldn't want to amend the code and then realize that they didn't have room on their site or something like that.
So quick question. So 16 total pods, so 32 spots at a minimum, parking spots at a minimum.
If I remember the code correctly, yes. But you can't see the rest of the site, but it's got more than that.
And is this subject to like our shared parking review? So if light industrial could show shared parking, we could not have a whole sea of parking lot. Presuming that light industrial operates during work hours and community members going there for dinner or something would have shared parking. I'm just thinking both sides of it. So, okay. I don't know if you want more or less parking, but
Adequate.
adequate, that's the
Right.
caveat there.
Yeah.
So I have some questions and then just some process questions. So at this point, I think it's appropriate as a commission to ask the applicant questions, and then we'll open the floor for any buddy else that wants to testify. But before I close the hearing, I want to kind of ask questions of staff. So does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I have one question for the applicant.
Uh-huh.
If we can go back to the map with the parcels. And so thanks again for the presentation. Great information. Looking at parcel D and comparing it to the table above, the asterisk, the first asterisk, which excludes buildings, paved areas, and areas under high voltage, natural areas near Rock Creek. I assume the 2.8 acres is set up to avoid a setback, and maybe staff can weigh in here on the setback requirements from Rock Creek. Because it does look like the entirety of that Rock Creek parcel is illustrated as usable space, but for the 2.8 that's carved out, which is where the pod could be. I'm just trying to figure out if that blue is just overestimating the area, or if it's just like, hey, this is just our general map that shows 500 feet. I think that's all it is.
Yeah, the blue is just the 500 feet.
Okay.
The dashed yellow with the letters on it, those were the areas where we figured you could probably squeeze in a food cart pod. So that parcel it's got D, but that parcel actually extends all the way east across Rock Creek and goes to, all the way over, and then it goes down even off the page. It's a very large parcel. What do we have here? Yeah, so the blue part's 10 acres, but then there's another 10 or 15 to the south of that. So it's a big parcel. But we were just trying to estimate what would sort of be the usable area if someone wanted to do the food cart pod. So it's not super precise, right? We're squinting at aerial maps and we're clicking around, but it's somewhere around 2.8.
Thanks. I'll reserve the rest of questions for staff. Thanks.
Yeah, why, I'm just kind of curious. I'm just thinking about just the area kind of you picked. This is the area, and you outlined it some, but then I think of like, okay, well, why the specifics? Like, why 500 feet, not 1,000 feet or less, or, and why not more general or in light industrial, maybe up 99, or if you're talking about places just close to major arterials, like why why draw the lines here and say 500 feet's the one?
Sure. Reasonable question. I did tell you it was somewhat arbitrary, but not entirely. So it had to do with sort of balancing, providing opportunities where we thought it made sense along Tualatin and Sherwood Road, but not totally encumbering or not leading to too much land being used up for this. And so it was a bit of a mapping exercise, and we had some other scenarios and that we met with staff and chewed on a few ideas, and ultimately this felt appropriate. 1,000 feet maybe would be too big, because then you could have more land devoted to this, and 300 or 400 feet felt a little too small, because then like traffic circulation getting in and out near intersections was more challenging.
And it wouldn't include your client's whole property at 300 feet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Well, and clearly staff agrees or they wouldn't have recommended this. Yeah. Okay.
And I think there's the only other light and I'm reading, looking at the map right now. Really the only other light industrial is down off Sunset. Correct?
What do you want me to do?
Oh, no, thank you, but yeah,
And I honestly couldn't remember where all the zones were. Like, no one asked
Yeah.
that question. I was just curious.
yeah, I think,
There's a little bit off Highway 99 to the north, roughly to the
oh,
north of it.
yeah,
Oh,
I
I
see
see.
that.
Yep.
So, okay, thank you, thank you.
Look at that.
I grabbed the wrong binder to have that
Yeah.
and my script, so thank you.
And when we start talking about Highway 99, we get a little bit spooked by ODOT too, so this avoids having to think about access onto the highway or anything like that.
Okay. I don't have questions for staff. I mean, for applicant, I have questions of staff and process questions. And if anybody, Commissioner Kai, do you have any questions for the applicant before we call for proponents and opponents?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you. Oh, our screens just went
Thank you.
dark. Thank you very much. Keeping that picture up was super helpful. Thank you.
Good visual.
All right, so I'll ask, I do not have any other blue cards, so I'll just call, does anyone wish to speak in favor of the application? And then I'll call if anybody wishes to speak in opposition of the application. And then ask if anybody would like to provide neutral testimony. The next is having staff respond to any questions. There were no questions from anybody else testifying. And I don't want to close the public hearing because I have questions of staff that may lead to either getting more information or some other actions. So my first question that comes up is 500 feet from Tualatin Sherwood Road. I'm just thinking about road spacing standards from an arterial. If we are citing them within 500 feet, we've just put in Tualatin Sherwood Road so that we have better traffic flow. So I'm going to presume that all access is going to be from the next smaller street, which will be whatever that tiny little word says, Century Drive. So what's the spacing standards to a regular street? Since I would presume a food cart pot is going to have hopefully lots of traffic in and out. What would be considered street spacing standards there?
Can I add to that? I mean, this parcel's had an application before, if I remember, and there were street requirements for turn lanes and things like that that ended up there. So just piggybacking on her comment on that.
Yeah, so staff would have to get that information for you. I do not recall the spacing standards. It's more tied to the engineering side of things. I will say a similar site, you're right on the money that it would probably be off of a side street and not directly on Tualatin Sherwood Road. The most recent case study example we can kind of look at is there was a restaurant here recently approved, Mazatlan. And they took access right there at the very edge of the parcel. That was the minimum. So essentially they couldn't put the driveway towards Tualatin. They had to push it basically there. So that would give a rough indication of what those standards would look like.
25 feet or so. Okay. And that begs the question, because you got one restaurant versus 16 type restaurants. I'm just, the other two questions I have are kind of curveball-y. So, and I'm putting them out there to see if there's any other concerns or questions or support. The first is when we've done applicant initiated code amendments versus, council directed. I've only been experienced one other one, and we put a sunset clause on it that allowed like a 6-month trial to see how it worked, and then put a note on if the code were to stay in place, council would take a second action to make it a permanent, or it would sunset after 6 months or some period of time, so that if it worked, great, but it wouldn't provide a proliferation of things without having to go through a whole new code amendment. So that was my first consideration to say, is that a good idea or a bad idea to have a sunset clause on the code so that it would expire and be removed? And then staff doesn't have to answer right now. I'm just saying, it's because it goes to the second part, which is I don't want to see there's 5 opportunities, 6 opportunities. And if we had 3 food cart pods on Tualatin Sherwood Road, because that became a food cart row, I don't know how I'd feel about that. And I know that, distance from other dispensaries was in our code. That's probably state law too, but is a distance from another food cart pod a good idea or a bad idea? And I'm just throwing them out as, I don't know, I get concerned if I see 2 across from each other, is it going to be a lot of weird cross traffic? So.
One thing the applicant stated that maybe I will ask staff, a way to get more information out of that is, there's a kind of a laundry list of things he said about us being able to kind of, as part of conditional use, being able to just deny applications based on various criteria through conditional use. It doesn't fit or something. I don't mean to put too many words in your mouth. I just don't remember exactly. But with conditional use, it gives us the ability to really review each case by case. And it's not necessarily just a shoe in, I guess, so to speak. Is that, I guess the question could be, was what the applicant stated true about that? And how does that work with conditional use?
With denying a conditional use permit.
And can I add a 10 seconds onto that? It seems like the question would be with regard to how many food cart pods there can be in a given polygon. Is there any language in the current food cart code that addresses that?
And it's probably going to be capitalism driven,
Yeah, it's going to be market driven.
Market driven. Thank you for the word. It's probably going to be market driven more than anything, but I don't know. I'm nervous.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
No, no.
There's a lot to remember there.
Let's cover all those before we get more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just kind of breaking this apart a little bit, there was the first mention regarding kind of like the sunset clause. From my understanding of the time that was previously used, that could likely be incorporated again into the language if the commission felt that was appropriate to recommend to council. Same with the distance requirement, but I think you guys kind of hit it on the head with a couple things, market driven, right? So 2 food cart pods together potentially might not make kind of a great market mixture. But also under the CUP process, there's specific criteria that talks about C subsection 3, granting of the proposal will provide for a facility or use that meets the overall needs of the community and achieves the goals of the comprehensive plan. So if that need is already met in that aspect, right, with the establishment of a food cart pod, then if somebody hypothetically came in to put it right next to the site, they would have to essentially display that there is a community need for that additional food cart pod, because it gets processed as a type 4 and a type 3 consolidated application. It comes to the planning commission, and the planning commission can make that determination if that criteria is satisfied. Does that answer the? Sorry, I kind of spitballed that really quickly.
Yeah, it basically answers the question, but the actual effectiveness of denying an application because there's two food cart pods side by side would be onerous, I think.
That would open the city to litigation.
No,
Yeah.
no,
No?
no. I think, just to be direct with you guys, I wouldn't recommend a sunset clause. You can absolutely do it. It's in your purview. You can do it, and we've done it on other in other cases. Mainly, we do it in very specific situations. The Great Recession, for example, we were kind of given a lot of allowances, if you will, to kind of help development move forward, or grant extensions, things like that. And then we would sunset it, for example. Or if you guys don't like a state law and there's a chance that it's going to get repealed, we might say, and upon this, action by the state, then this gets repealed. So it's kind of used in very specific situations. It's a fairly uncommon approach if generally you agree with the legislative update. So I think the question would be, do you agree with this proposal or not? I think, and staff is happy to weigh in a little bit more explicitly if you'd like on our thoughts from a policy standpoint. At the end of the day, you're giving a recommendation to city council who's going to decide on this. But it's uncommon planning practice to put sunset clauses in ordinances or code like this. The question about conditional uses, I think Hugo's right. I don't have a lot of concern about what's proposed here. I think the market comment is right. Basically, the way I see this, you have an applicant for a zone change right now. They have not submitted for a conditional use permit or site plan review for a food cart pod. It seems likely that they will, but that application is not in yet. So in theory, any one of these property owners, if this gets passed by city council, any one of these property owners could come forward. And I certainly wouldn't be in a position, just to be open to the applicant as well, to deny that, because I think theirs is coming forward. So, part of what we do is provide the opportunity through zoning and let applicants come if they like. It seems like, because we don't see a lot of, we haven't had pre-apps or anything else, it seems like this would likely be the first applicant. It'd be up to you to determine whether or not to approve that. If that got approved and developed, any new applicant could come forward on any of these properties. And frankly, you could approve that as well if you wanted to, or it would be up to you. Actually, it wouldn't go to city council. I have a hunch that there might be some pause, especially in this specific area, about another food cart pod based on the size of this. But that to me is the market, right? You get one shop here, and I mean, I wouldn't see it any differently than any other use, right? Grocery store, gas station, whatever it is. You're allowing it based on the zone. Someone gets in, it's up to the market then to decide based on, if another one should go. I wouldn't see this any different. Like, it's a little unique because it's a specific text amendment request in front of you right now. So all the attention is on this use, but it's the same thing for all the other uses. And it's just whether or not the code should allow it. And I mean, just to finish that thought, like, if you thought it wasn't a good idea for some reason because they were right next to each other, there was too much demand. Let's say we get another one, not in this area, but two more in the next 5 years, and we get another one. the code would allow you to deny it without any issues. Basically, a conditional use permit is a conditional use permit. It's pretty open based on the comprehensive plan. You guys can look at the comprehensive plan and say, hey, it doesn't meet the needs of the community for many different reasons, and there wouldn't be any issues with that. I think when the code says conditional use permit, most seasoned, developers, applicants know what that means, is that there needs to be a clear path forward by the policymakers or the policy board. So, happy to answer questions on that. And then just, I think the only other thing we didn't answer was on the access. So the access to really what we're looking at, if I'm understanding your question, Gene, is the roads off of 12th and Sherwood Road, because it's unlikely that new access is going to be granted to 12th and Sherwood Road for any of the properties shown there. I mean, they already have it, or there's going to be another street. So in this case, Century Drive is a collector, and the collector spacing is 100 feet from the intersection. So as long as they were 100 feet from the intersection, that would be permitted access. The other streets are Langer Farms Parkway, that's an arterial, but it already has access. And then Arrow Street, existing street, that one's a local. And so it would just be that tax lot 300 on Olds Place. If you can see that one, and that would be essentially as far away from the intersection as you can get, but that's a local street. And so they would just get access from the most feasible location on that site.
But does the infrastructure need change with this use, I think is part of it? Or is that something that gets considered with each application, essentially? Like, is the street wide enough, or is it going to accommodate the amount of traffic, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so this kind of two-step process. Right now, you're in a text amendment process. And so that's looking really big picture at basically you're adding a use to all of these properties, an allowed use to these properties. And so that's the applicant mentioned no significant impact, if you remember that comment. Basically, they had a traffic engineer look at this. ODOT has reviewed it. City of Sherwood has reviewed it. Basically, we're looking for, if we allow this use, let's say no retail was ever allowed in these zones, and now we're allowing retail, and we have a major concern that now as we allow retail, the traffic in theory could go way up because of that. That's kind of what we would be looking at this stage. But because this is a food cart pod that already conforms to the zone, basically if you caught the 20,000 maximum, that's kind of what they're already allowed. So they're already allowed a 20,000 square foot retail building in this zone. And I think the theory was, I didn't read the traffic analysis in detail, but in theory, it's 20,000 square feet of food cart pod is no different than 20,000 square feet of retail. Therefore, there's no significant impact. But to answer your question, so big picture, no impact with this particular text amendment. And then there would be a traffic study for each of the individual food cart pods as they came in, if the engineering department had a concern. And there would be mitigation if there was a traffic concern.
Yeah, and just to add to that, ensuring that all public facilities and services can be satisfied with the proposed use, that's under the criteria and listed under the CUP approval criteria, and it includes transportation facilities.
I have another question too, if you want to go first, Joe. No.
Okay, if I can get my button
Yep.
here. So this is, I'm definitely working hard to not beat a dead horse here, because I think you've given very good information on all the questions we've asked. So I'm kind of inverting a little bit. The one thing that I can imagine happening in the future is a landowner outside of or more than 500 feet from 12th and Sherwood saying, why didn't you include me? So my logical brain says, well, if that happens in the future, any landowner can come and say, I want another amendment to widen it. Is that problematic in anyone's eyes? I mean, again, to me, the key term that I was looking for tonight, because I couldn't find, was arbitrary. It is an arbitrary amount. It just seems to make good general sense. So does anybody have a problem with it was too restrictive? Or do we not worry about that because that can be addressed in the future?
That's a good question. The applicant did a neighborhood meeting for this, and we actually, we sent notice within 1,000 feet of the outer boundary of that blue area, actually. So would really be like 1,500 feet from 12th and Sherwood Road. And those property owners, applicants would have the opportunity to show up here and provide testimony if they felt their properties should be included. And then let's say this gets adopted, absolutely, like a city of Sherwood is a jurisdiction where anybody can propose a text amendment and have it be considered. So, it's a fair playing game as this applicant to make their case in front of planning commission and city council.
So I like everything that I've heard tonight. I'm just trying to figure out, just to put it on the record, that what we're saying here is that there is no first and right, first and line, first and right. That's not a thing. It's gonna be market driven. We get that. One concern, which is again, based on the market, what would be preventing a landlord or a property owner here within the 500 feet that is basically has a lot of lessees, and they say, you know what, your leases are now going to be void because I want to convert this existing facility or this existing parcel within 500 feet into a pod, and if we're losing out on the other employers and whatnot and businesses because they want to convert something within this area.
Like existing buildings.
Yeah.
Hugo jump in after it, like that they would still, if they were doing a food cart pod, right? And food carts are very specifically defined. It's mobile, all that sort of thing. So if they were doing a food cart pod, they would need approval from the city of Sherwood. So if they wanted to demo their building, for example, it would be smart for them before they, terminated leases and went in that direction to come chat, do a pre-application.
Oh, yeah,
with
for
the
sure.
city. So,
It's just market driven then, basically.
they would need approval. And I don't see there's existing commercial around there, the Langer, basically the Langer Farms development is what I call it. Those are such new buildings. I don't see it. I would see it potentially on the vacant site there on the corner, of Old's Place would probably be the only other viable place I would see it. And they would have to really show that they could, hit all the marks of the code.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The only thing I would also like to add to that is that a lot of those retail spaces that are existing, right? They have a certain amount of square footage that would probably exceed a food cart pod, right? And so they essentially kind of have those tenants that need that specific square footage, right? And they supply that opportunity. So everything's market driven, right? But they most likely have kind of tailored their development to meet those needs of those particular clients intentionally. And then additionally, everything would have to get approval, right? So you guys would review it and it would come through planning commission. So there's really no guarantee for anything if in that case that transpired to be anything.
Regarding the number of these, it was expected, this is just a comment. I think, I didn't write down the page number, but I'm pretty sure there was something the applicant commented on somewhere in their application about the market for these and how many we could expect. Like, they're probably not going to get built on every one of these. There's just, the market can't bear that. I think it was like 2 or 3 or something is what do you guys remember, since the applicant can't talk anymore?
Well, we haven't closed the hearing, so we can bring them
okay.
up and
Yeah.
ask a question.
That would seem like a concern of yours. I read that, but
Yeah, so I guess the question would be, again, so it goes back to conditionally, we already allow restaurants in this area without drive-through. And so what we're saying is that we are going to allow restaurants, little tiny ones, with 2 parking spots on it. And I guess I was always, I'm surprised that there weren't other comments from our agency partners about protection of light industrial land, but we're limiting the space that we're using to the 20,000 square feet. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. I was very anxious about food cart pods in light industrial, and I'm just looking to the other commission members. What is your general?
Just opinion,
General
because it's legislative.
legislative.
Well, my experience with food cart pods, I know I'm struggling now, but so
I've been mumbling over
been to
it.
the Fairview one, been to the Troutdale one, been to the Hillsborough one, been to the Beaverton ones, been to the old school downtown one that was on Washington. It's if one pops up here, I don't think you're gonna see people clamoring to build anymore. I mean, they sort of stake down their territory. It's very much a first comer advantage. So I think, and the one thing I do notice is there's the lot across from on the northeast corner of 12th and Sherwood and Langer Farms that's split in half at a diagonal.
Mhm.
That's zoned retail, so that would someone could do a food cart there if they want to. But I think it's an absolute first mover advantage if someone wants to do that. And my only concern is it being sort of, property owner driven and the arbitrary of the 500, which we've already discussed. And so, I don't have too many worries about this. I would love to see food carts here in Sherwood. Definitely am a proponent of it. And, but I don't think you'll see multiple ones popping up.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
ask where that analysis was in the packet. I could not find it of the demand.
I think it was 2 is what,
Do you know where it is?
Was it 2? Is that what you said? 2? You
Yeah.
think 2? Okay.
so I think I wanted to just add to that. I think what was said is spot on. I think the market will hold based on everywhere I've been and to the food carts I've been. It's one large establishment. You have rotating food carts that come in, that changes up the feel. You have more permanent ones than others, and some make it, some don't. But at this location here, I think the first in time, first and right kind of approach, where he's got the cart is way up out there, got an advantage and has a good kind of look through on this. And I think the text amendment, what we're talking about here, is appropriate for this area. And if anybody else brings it up again, it's another look. But ultimately, I don't, the level of anxiety for this is, while it's 2.8 acres here, and that's likely the one that's going to be move forward with the proposal, we still have another bite of the apple to review the conditions and all the other stuff that goes along with that site approval. Personally, I'm concerned about Rock Creek. And there are opportunities there that can be added too. Like, hey, we can do some restoration, invasive species, set up some bird blinds, and you can have a whole thing set up, and you can have, a little walkway along the back part there along Rock Creek and make it functional.
Yeah, and my angst on the orientation was not having back doors along 12th and Sherwood Road or the entrance to our community. So I know that is, that's my big deal, is that we drive past 12th and Sherwood Road, we come up to Century Drive. What we don't want to see are a bunch of propane tanks and everybody's back doors. So
I think our code covered that pretty good with the fencing and screening and whatnot.
And that's the other angst, is we haven't seen what our code looks like in our city.
This one's never been built.
Right,
as I
right.
know.
So it's just, so I had come tonight with questions, wondering if I would be able to get answers enough tonight, or if we would continue it to the next meeting. So I would ask the commission, do you want to continue this evening, or make a, to have more questions answered and deliberation? Or do you feel that you can make a recommendation one way or the other this evening?
Are we still, is the testimony still open right now?
Yeah, it is. Because I haven't closed.
Question then?
No, I don't have,
Yeah.
Were you asking?
Well, if we're prepared to make a decision tonight, or if we're gonna walk away with questions for staff. Because if we're if we're complete and we're just going to be deliberating, then I would ask the applicant to come up for a rebuttal and then close the public hearings officially. But if we're gonna keep it open because we're gonna send staff away with questions, I want to make a request for a date certain continuance. So
I have no more questions.
And for me.
I'm ready,
I don't think I have any more.
ready to make a decision this evening, one or
Well,
for or
we-
against.
We discuss after the closing, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll discuss afterwards, but the questions that would be compelling to staff to have to bring us back information or or the applicant, or there's no more? Okay. So before I close the public hearing, I'll ask the applicant if he has any rebuttal from the testimony or from our deliberation before we, because before we close the official public hearing, I wanted, you do have time left on your 30 minutes, so you have a rebuttal opportunity.
It's a generous time clock. I don't have any rebuttal since nobody spoke. What Eric, he mentioned the 1,000-foot radius plus the 500 feet. So everyone within 1,500 feet of 12th and Sherwood Road did get notice. When we had our neighborhood meeting, nobody showed up.
It's sad.
It was not too controversial apparently. So anyway, we hung out for a half hour and then decided that was probably enough. So anyway, happy to answer any more questions you have. I think this is a good, robust discussion, and I like to see planning commissions dig in. I used to work for another city, so I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd. I like watching planning commissions. So I did want to echo some of the statements that staff has said. The sunset clause, I think, would be problematic for purely the willingness of a property owner to invest in paying a consultant like McKinsey to do design work or paying a contractor to construct something. That all takes time, it takes certainty. And so if there is the possibility that it might go away, I think a lot of owners would just hesitate and said, I don't want to make that commitment. And certainly there's nothing to stop the city from amending the code again, whether that's to add more properties or to say, you know what, we've decided maybe we don't want to allow this. So there's always ways to get through this. But hopefully you'll get at least one application and like it. And we also recognize that it's been a year and a half, maybe not quite that long, a year and a quarter at least, since the food cart pod rules were put in place, and staff still hasn't had any inquiries other than our clients. So, being first to market is sometimes a good thing. With respect to driveway spacing and stuff, yes, that's a good consideration. We think most of these sites would utilize the side streets, which are collectors, arterials, local streets. And there's two that we drew that front right on 12th and Sherwood Road. As Eric said, Washington County is unlikely to grant a new driveway application, but those are potential that they could share with an existing driveway, or, in some cases, what we sketched out was a small portion of an existing larger property, so they would presumably just use their existing driveways. With respect to the number of pods, we made an assumption that 2 probably was about right, given market conditions. And so it's somewhat theoretical, but where that comes into play is the transportation analysis that we did. We assumed 2, so we looked at, and by we, I actually mean the traffic engineer. It wasn't me, although I commented on it. So looked at all 6 of the lettered sites on there, figured out what would be the worst traffic that could come out of this on each of these 6 sites, and then picked the 2 that were the highest traffic levels, added those up and analyzed what effect would it have. Overall, my recollection is it would increase the PM peak hour traffic by 40 trips. and increase the daily traffic by 300 some trips or something. And ODOT sort of has a rule of thumb, spelled out in the Oregon Highway Plan, that if you are fewer than 400 additional trips, you're considered a small increase, and ODOT doesn't really worry about it. I don't think that Craig in the engineering department was too worried either, and neither was Washington County. So those all seemed positive. But of course, if there were only one cart, food cart pod site, then the traffic levels would be lower than that. And it could be kind of a wash based on the restaurants that are allowed in the zone already. And again, any specific proposal that came in front of you would quite likely need a full transportation impact analysis for that site, for those driveway, for that number of food carts, et cetera. So it would be somewhat more descriptive than the sort of theoretical exercise that was done for the transportation planning rule. I know I'm getting way ahead of myself, but Rock Creek enhancement, some of that will be happening. Yeah, Clean Water Services, you know, they've got their vegetated corridor that goes along the creek. And when applications come in for specific developments, they either require the applicant to enhance the plantings, or in some cases, there's an opportunity for the applicant to write them a check, and then CWS does the work. So that sort of thing is expected to happen sooner rather than later. I don't know about trails. I know that there's a new sewer line going in.
But that's
so-
more application specific versus.
Yes, yeah, that's why I'm speaking somewhat in generalities.
Yeah.
So anyway, there are, I guess my point is there's mechanisms to do that, and that's a good thing.
Do you have a
I
question?
do have one more question for you. It has to do with the analysis you made of the benefits of this application. And this might actually massage some of your concerns about the general use of light industrial becoming this.
Mhm.
One of the bullet points in the benefits is making employment areas more desirable and marketable for current and prospective employees, helping employers attract and retain workers. That to me reads like having food carts around improves the viability and use of adjacent light industrial. It's more, if reading into it, it sounds like it makes them more attractive to build better industrial buildings around here because you can get better employees because there's a food cart space.
It's
Am
nice.
I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
nice to have a place to get lunch. Our office is in the central east side of Portland, and there's not a whole lot of
So that's where we're going with
options
this.
for getting
Yeah.
your lunch. It'd be nice to have some more. So anyway, it's kind of along that line. And then I think one of the other bullet points we put in there was sometimes there's sites that are sort of underutilized, like they're too small to fit in a big light industrial user or manufacturer or anything like that, but you could probably squeeze in a food cart pod. So you know, if you can put the land to good use, that's a benefit rather than just having it roadblock clearance.
And so have you seen this effect in other developments? in your
No.
research?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't track that. I'll be honest.
I
Mhm.
was actually thinking on the trip where you got light industrial within walking distance of a food cart pod instead of having to drive over to another area of town. But
That's it for me.
okay. All right. Any other questions before we close the public hearing? All right, then we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing and
Thank you.
move into deliberation. Thank you very much for entertaining all of our questions.
Yes.
All right, does staff have anything to add that specifically addresses a question raised? I'm just reading a script, not that there's
I do not.
necessarily anything. Does any member of the commission have any questions regarding clarification of the testimony? Any further questions? All right, then we'll go into deliberation. And I would entertain
My only,
questions.
yeah, from a deliberation standpoint is making sure we're not setting up simple exceptions to current zoning. I want to make sure we're doing this so, you know, we don't have one of these every 2 weeks saying, hey, we want to do this here. It's not zoned that way. So I want to make sure that I trust staff that we've crafted this in a way that this isn't going to be a continuing issue with other landowners saying, oh, I want my exception to be zoned for this use instead of this use. So I guess that's my only concern.
And I think the reason it's easier for me to accommodate this now, listening to all the testimony that was provided, was this food cart pod code is new. So it's not like we're adding something that was already existing someplace else in the code. It's a brand new code section. And so now we're just trying to find out where it would fit appropriately. I guess I would think we wouldn't add other uses as a conditional use to light industrial that didn't fit, you know, that's already existing someplace else. I would hope. And then I want to do two things. One is ask Commissioner Kai if he had any questions, because I know he's remote and I can't see if he's raising his hand or not. So.
No, Gene, I'm good at this time. Thank you.
All right. And then my other kind of weird, because it's 500 feet is arbitrary, but the lot C, it's lines drawn as if they could develop it, but it doesn't look like the road would allow it based on where their lot line is. And I just would say, you know, would 505 feet allow, I mean,
that's a GIS exercise. That might
What?
just be a mapping thing at this point between Arrow Street and C. Is that what you're saying?
yes.
If Arrow Street continues to linger,
Yes. Does anybody else have any? It seems like we're telling someone they could do it, but then we're telling them you don't have a road to connect to. You're outside your access point is outside of it. Does that matter? Or when it comes, if that second application came in on C, staff would be able to accommodate within the 500 feet criteria?
I think if we're being safe, we should give it, we should bring it up to that roadway. What I'll say is that that property is owned by PGE, so and I think they have plans for it. It's very unlikely that C would ever develop as a food cart pod, but it's a good catch. I think we wouldn't want to run into issues just in case there is a proposal there, and you know, you guys pay a lot of attention and have a problem, I guess, approving something because the language very clearly says entirely located within, 500 feet. So what we can do is I would, to address that, what I'd recommend is have the motion recommend that we include all of site C in the recommendation to city council, and we could do a really quick just analysis in GIS and then have city council adopt to make sure that C gets included.
Yeah, thank you. Just it's cleaner and we don't want to make a mess for future staff or commission.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that property naturally be bordered though by the street? I mean, otherwise there's a third tax lot there that's between the curb and the north end of that lot.
well, the 500 feet's arbitrary from the edge of Tualatin and Sherwood.
So access to C would come from the extension of Arrow, which is currently in. If you guys have driven by there, that street is now in. So yeah, I mean it should touch that northern area so that the drive aisle and the parking stalls and landscaping are all within the 500 feet.
Okay, as long as if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it right.
My only concern for deliberation purposes is pedestrian and bicycle traffic to these locations, given 12th and Sherwood Road. So if there's anything that's north of 12th and Sherwood, they're gonna have to cross at Langers and then come down, right? Because Century, there's no crossing there. You're basically crossing the whole thing. So from a real perspective, or in reality, this is going to be driving only more or less on the north side of 12th and Sherwood for safety purposes, or they're going to have to go, like I said, to Langers and then down and around and back over. But on the south side, D and E, it does look like that would be quite a bit more accessible to individuals, both riding along Century Boulevard. And I know we're going to have some discussions. I don't recall whether there's a bike lane on Century Boulevard at that location. But that is one concern that I had about the areas to the north and trying to access them.
You also have another crossing at Gerda Lane where the DMV is. I know
Mhm.
It's not shown in this map, but it's almost equal distance between the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a concern.
Is that site specific versus legislative?
I mean, at that point, it's the developer will
Doesn't have
decide
to,
whether
yeah,
it's viable for them or not,
exactly.
based on that.
Yeah.
I mean, developers are naturally incented to develop the properties the highest and best use the property allows, you know, and
I think we have a good understanding of what's going to be developed out of this, and then
yeah,
that'll hit
yes.
the market.
Well,
and
and there's the offset to that, the counter to that is, I mean, cities, you know, planning commissions, you know, and especially city council tries to represent the city and its interests, and there's a purpose for zoning. I think that this approaches the question with, well, there could be a higher and best use than what the current zoning allows, but we want to recognize that the zoning is there for a reason, and we think that this is a good kind of joining of the two purposes. We're going to try to bring a little commercial into as on a conditional basis, light industrial in a way that we think makes sense, helps the city and helps us as developers. I think it strikes a decent balance. I think it's especially since we have the conditional use considerations as they come before us. Yeah, that's in the interest of discussion. That's kind of where I land. I don't think I see a problem with this.
I see food cart pods as not being an item that was in front of the people putting the code together 10 years ago. That wasn't an item, but they entertained restaurants that didn't have drive-throughs. And now we have this food cart pod is not a drive-through, but kind of has a blend between the two, but it seems to be a new it's a new product to the market, and to accommodate a new product to the market that allows what our community has been asking for, we're providing an opportunity that's reasonable and appropriate in the scope that we're allowing it. If we open it up to all light industrial, I would see that being problematic, because trip generation far away from 12th and Sherwood Road was my concern, and or using some of our prime light industrial larger lots and starting to carve it away. If we're limiting it to the scope and to where the transportation makes the most sense, it seems like a good partnership between adding a new product but not destroying what light industrial's purpose is.
And here's the other thing that strikes me is these are not giant buildings with tons of foundational infrastructure. The developer, you know, this is their risk to take, right, for this stuff. If it fails, okay, well, it's not as hard to tear it down and build something else,
Right.
If needed. So if it's a win, then it's a win for the city in that sense as well, and the surrounding area.
And I think we did best we could with the food cart pod language when it came through the first time, so that we're
Yeah.
going to get a good product. So
Yeah,
that was
some
that-
controls around. I like your comments about visibility and not looking at propane tanks. Yes.
and
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 the
that,
applicant has heard that as well.
and that's what we were trying to do, is make something that fits within our community, that is desirable, and that is appealing to people to want to come to it. So my hope is that it is a destination, that people do drive to it, they do see it, that it makes the person either that's working here or living here or just coming through have another a piece of eye candy on the corner that says, hey, Sherwood's got another cool feature to it. So
We'll see
anyway,
what comes in for applications.
yeah. All right. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
All right.
If you guys are ready for that.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay. All right, let me get my right language here. Legislative application motions. Here we go. Okay, I move the start over. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for LU 2025-018 PA. And that is an amendment to the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code to allow food cart pods in a light industrial zone district as a conditional use permit, provided the use is entirely sited within 500 feet of 12 Sherwood Road. Based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report.
With one minor amendment to capture the entirety of site C.
Yes.
I think that's good enough. We got it. It'll probably be 505, 510 feet, something like that.
One thing backwards, but it's all in there.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we forward a recommendation of approval to the city council on LU 2025-018 PA amendment to Sherwood's zoning and development code. Any further discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you to the applicant for assisting and providing testimony this evening.
Yes.
Next is new business, nothing on the agenda. Any surprises? All right. Commissioner comments. Does anybody have any comments, update on subcommittees, transportation plan, anything?
I
going
got a
on?
question for staff, related, sort of related to code changes, things like that. So recently in the news, DHS has been buying a lot of empty warehouses and using them for, or setting them up for detention and correctional facilities with all the stuff that's going on. Is there anything in our code that either allows or disallows that use for all the new warehouses we built in the industrial area?
Yeah, it's a great question. Detention centers are not very clearly not a permitted or conditionally permitted use in any of our zones. So there'd have to be there would have to be an interpretation essentially that those would be allowed. And I can't see that being the case. So because they're not explicitly allowed, I can't see it. I can't see them coming. And just to be clear, we have not fielded any questions or comments or inquiries about any type of uses like that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner comments or questions?
Just forward looking real quick. So sounds like we have a commission meeting on the 10th, right? But that's the only thing on the agenda for March. Anything else on the horizon we should be looking forward to that you're aware of this time?
No, just the Old Town Strategic Action Plan. Is there anything else scheduled from Planning Commission on your docket? I can't think of anything other than the Old Town Plan. Oh,
Eric, are we looking at the tree code again, or is that later in the
Just gonna
year?
ask. Yeah, there are a number of.
We're going to do a work session with City Council in April to scope the tree code, and then it'll come through Planning Commission for kind of review and refinement and and then go back to city council. So April to you, Counselor Giles.
And then to us later. Okay,
Yep, and then back
Perfect.
to planning commission.
Thank you.
all right, excellent. Hearing no other questions, comments, or answers, I will adjourn the meeting. So adjourned. Thank you. All right, well, thank you. I was needy.
Oh, yeah, you got that. I feel very thankful that we have. Yeah, well done, so. That we have.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.